Okay. A few years ago, I decided that I was done living the life that I was living because I knew that it wasn't what I wanted. Because I was just doing what everybody told me that I was supposed to do. And, I realized that that was part of why I was so depressed and anxious and so dissatisfied with my life. There was always that feeling that I wasn't supposed to be living the way that I was. And that's because there was something deeper in me that knew, like, I was hiding that part of me away, I guess. And so over the last few years, I've done a lot of healing and self-discovery. I was started living my life very intentionally, like asking myself why I was doing the things that I did instead of mindlessly like doing what everybody else told me I was supposed to do. Because I found that the more I did what everybody else told me to do, the more depressed I got. So I started thinking, what do you want? And recently, I was diagnosed with autism. And, some days it doesn't phase me too much, but other days I sit here like I am. Like I just spent, I don't know, an hour journaling about some things I've been thinking about related to my experiences and how it makes my life experiences make a lot more sense knowing now that I have autism. And I realized that a lot of my journey of finding myself and figuring out the life that I wanted to live, I already knew these things. Like, I think back to memories of my elementary age self, and she knew who she was. I always knew who I was. It's just that I resisted who I was, and I thought that it was wrong. I started therapy a few years ago, and I was diagnosed with ADHD, and I was like, I always knew it. I always knew, but I didn't feel validated in it, and I didn't really start accommodating and recognizing it until I was diagnosed. And being able to identify the symptoms, that made the world of difference because it was like, yeah, you're valid in your struggles. There's a lot of other people who actually have the same struggles, and here's the ways that they accommodate it, right? So I started utilizing the tools that I could to help that. But I still had this feeling that there was something else. And throughout that time from me getting diagnosed with ADHD 3 years ago, I have improved significantly in my depressive and my anxiety symptoms. Yet there was always still this other problem that remained that I couldn't pinpoint. I didn't really understand. I just felt like there was still something more because of the other ways that I struggled with my sensitivity to nearly everything. And finally, I we discover that it's autism, and I always knew. I always knew, but it's like what really gets me is that in my journey of finding myself, I come back to who I always knew that I was. And it's like the problem was never me. Like, I wrote so much, but this last paragraph I said, in my healing journey of embracing who I am, I've learned that I am who I always knew I was. Like, I said, all I needed to do was let go of the shame of being who I always knew myself to be. I grieve who I could have been if I hadn't spent the majority of my life rejecting everything I am. Because if you knew me growing up, you know that my nicknames were Clumsy and Crybaby. And funny enough, those are traits that are very common when you have ADHD and when you have autism. I remember being called slow and naive and all these other things, and I knew that there was something different about me, but I was just normal enough that those things went unrecognized. Because if you know one person with autism, you know one person with autism. If you know one person with ADHD, you know one person with ADHD. It's like it's so different in everybody. And since I didn't fit the demographic that everybody knew autism and ADHD to be, since it's not very researched. It's only recently begun to be recognized to present very differently in women, especially if you're high masking. It's like I went under the radar, and I imagine who I could have been if I had been supported in the right ways, and if I had been accepted for being the way that I was instead of told that it was wrong. Because if I knew that accepting and embracing who I was an option, I wouldn't have spent the majority of my life hating myself and trying to change everything that I was. Because I can't change those things, and I know because I tried my hardest to change, and when I couldn't change who I was, I felt like a failure. I felt like there was something wrong with me because I was trying my hardest and it wasn't good enough. But a lot has changed, and the reason why I'm able to embrace who I am now is because other people have also encouraged me to be who I am. You know, I see other people who have inspired me to embrace who I am, people who I feel like I could see myself in. If only I had the confidence. If only I had, what is it? Confidence isn't even the word. It's just like, I felt like seeing these other people live as they are in a way that I feel like I was supposed to be, that almost gave me permission to live the way that I always wanted to. And the more I started doing that, it was scary, but I realized like I was so much happier. I was like, I don't care if these other people don't like who I am. I like who I am. And I come to find out that there's a lot of other people who actually like that part of me too. And I wouldn't have found those people if I kept on being somebody I wasn't. And I feel like I wasted so much time trying to be somebody else. And my life is just now starting. Now that I'm now that I'm embracing who I knew I always was. It's like now with this diagnosis, everything else makes so much sense. I can't unsee it in every experience of my life. And now I know I was never crazy. I was never lazy. There was nothing wrong with me. It's just different. It's a different neurotype. I function differently. My sensitivity isn't something to be ashamed of. The only reason why people told me there was something wrong with it is because they didn't like it. But that doesn't mean there was something wrong. I was just in the wrong place. I was in the wrong environment. Because now I'm everything that I rejected about myself, like I've embraced that and accepted that as part of who I am and presented that as part of who I am, or just everything that I am. And I'm not hated for it like I was when I was in the wrong environment. It blows my mind. Sorry, I hope that wasn't just and I know I'm not the only one to have an experience like this. If there's anything I want anybody to get from this, it's to just be who you know yourself to be. Don't waste time trying to fit other people's standards. It's like I don't I didn't know how much happier I would be by disappointing everybody in my life. I lost so many people, but it doesn't even feel like losses because of how much I've gained, because of how many other wonderful people I've attracted in my life by being myself. I genuinely thought that I was not worthy of love. And now when I think back, it hurts me to think that I spent over 20 years of my life thinking that I had to change in order to be loved. God, like, no, like, you don't know how many people, you don't know how many people embrace you and love you and accept you and value you simply for you being who you are. I feel like I was born to cry on the internet and yap. God, that's the other thing. It's like Crybaby, clumsy, could never shut her mouth, always talking, and then I hopped on the internet and started yapping, and people tell me that they love it. I was like, are you serious? I spent so long watching people trying to be who they were. I would analyze people. I would see like, oh, this is like the popular girl, right? You want to be like her because everybody likes her. Screw that. Anyways, lots of tears. Oh my goodness, I don't think I've stopped crying. Gosh, there's probably like 2 ounces of tears over here. Anyways, thank you for watching. Hope this helps somebody. Oh my gosh, can you click stop recording? Thank you.